Hi, I'm Garbreak1, and this is Midgardy RPG's cool crowdfunding show. I'm here today with Robert Bucky about Sagas and Six-Guns. How's it going?
Pretty good. How you doing?
I'm pretty well. So, why don't you tell me about Sagas and Six-Guns?
Okay, so it's makes use of the Savage World system, a great system. I'm sure plenty of your viewers are familiar with it. So the setting, let me just go ahead and just kind of paint you a picture. So just picture like your typical, old west town. Kind of, maybe that scene from the beginning of Tombstone when the Earps roll into town. You got the kind of the stereotypical old west boom town. There's some subtle differences though. Probably the first thing you notice is all the signage, the on the windows, up on the billboards and stuff. It's that same old west style, but you've got but rather than written in the Latin alphabet, it's the Norse runic alphabet. That'd probably be the first thing you notice. You might see, you'd still see gentlemen and ladies walking around in Victorian outfits, but you might see a lawman with a badge, and the badge has, the rune of Tyr, which was the god of justice. And you might see a wanted poster. You might see some cattle rustlers on those wanted posters. But you might see a troll on that wanted poster also. Go into one of the saloons. You've got, the soiled doves walking around plying their trade. You've got cowboys sitting there, at tables. They've got a hand of cards in one hand, and they've got a drinking horn full of mead in the other. There's a skald over by the piano, by the grand piano, and he's reciting the Saga of Six-Guns Sven. While in the back, you got, and who's one of our titular characters. He's a great guy. I love him. And then in the back, you've got the saloon. You've got the Jarl holding court. He's listening to a, dispute between two cattle ranchers. So this is Sagas and Six-Guns. It is a merging of the Old West and the Old Norse. It is a cowboy Viking role playing.
That's a pretty succinct description right there. Uh, I enjoy the runic text. I assume that's the younger Futhark generally, given the
Yeah,
frontier.
yeah, yeah. The Elder Futhark, going strictly historically, is actually kind of proto-German. Kind of predates the Vikings, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, hell, that's pretty cool.
Mhm.
So why Old Norse and Old West?
So yeah, so I was a couple of years ago. I was just driving to work one day, and I live about 45 minutes from where I work, and I was listening to it was back when I was still working a day shift, and I was driving to work, and I was listening to I'm on a Marth. I don't know if you ever heard of them. They're, I figure with that necklace, you probably have heard of them.
Yeah.
It's to those of you who don't know, it's a Swedish death metal band, and their entire lineup is just themed completely around Norse mythology. Every single song has something to do with Norse legends and the gods and whatnot. Ragnarok, they're incredible, and and then I was switching between that and Volbeat's Western album, and I love the title of their album, "The Outlaw Gentleman and Shady Ladies." Great name. So I was kind of flipping between both of them, and I just kind of came to me like it'd be kind of cool to combine these two. So then later, I got to work, and then on my first chance I had to, on my break, I just posted on the Savage World's Facebook, official group, official fan group, and I was like, hey, I think this would be a really cool idea. And so a lot of people would chime in, yeah, this would be really awesome. And that's when Alan from Gallant Night Games was like, hey, we need to talk about this, and here we are. So yeah, just like I said, just kind of came to me just as a fluke, and there are a lot of um, there are a lot of correlations between between the Old West and the Norse culture. There, you have a lot of that. There is kind of, you do have that front, that kind of frontier mentality. You got you got the hardy people, eking out a living, and in very difficult circumstances. There's some similarities. I don't know if you're familiar with a professor out of
Dr.
name's
Jackson Crawford?
yes,
Yes.
exactly. Just bring him up. He's brought up some similarities, and it's funny because I discovered him after I started writing this concept, and he's made some similarities. He did this thing called the Cowboy Havamal, which is just amazing. So he's done some comparisons between the idea of the Dranger, the real um, masculine, the Norse concept of masculinity, and kind of the Western idea of it. And there's definitely a lot of overlap. So I apologize if you hear my dogs in the background, but
Dogs are never a
um,
problem.
yeah. So yeah, so there is definitely is a lot of overlap, and and just it just just the more I thought about the more I thought it'd just be kind of cool to integrate these two ideas. These the tropes of both the Viking and the cow in the classic Western. So
Yeah, and if you didn't get to Jackson Crawford, I was gonna. The Cowboy Hobbling
yeah,
Mall video is fantastic.
he's actually where I did a lot of my research. Just watching him and gave me a lot of ideas. So
Oh yeah, he's incredible. And
yeah.
he could talk. He could read the phone book, and I would listen to the whole thing, man. But yeah, it you've got some excellent art here. I'm just flipping through the page again.
hmm Oh yeah, Alan from the one of the other the other Alan in our group or in our team from the art section. Yeah, he just nailed it. He's great to work with. Just the stuff he came up with, and there's more. Um, so you'll see the six pre-generated characters. I did a great job on them. Six-Gun Sven's one of them. So yeah, he did a wonderful job with that.
Yeah. So why Savage Worlds specifically? Is it just because it's something you're familiar with, or
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of Savage Worlds. I've really been getting into it the last few years. It's kind of neat because I found because I live in Arizona, and and their Pinnacle is based out of Chandler, where I used to live myself. So I'm the last few years ago I moved. I'm still in the general area, but um, so it's a local it's a local company, and for me, and just the adaptability of Savage Worlds, I really got into it. I discovered Deadlands. That's really what drew me to it. I had heard of Savage Worlds, and I had picked up the um, one of the earlier editions of it, but I kind of just I picked it up and then I moved out to Arizona, and I just kind of fell by the wayside. Then I really started looking into it, discovered Deadlands, and once and to kind of backtrack a little bit, when I moved out to Arizona, I was at that point I wasn't super into the whole Western tropes. It just wasn't never really appealed to me but I moved out here to be with my wife. At the time, she was my girlfriend, and and we just started obviously out here in Arizona, you got so much of the Old West out here. Obviously, you got Tombstone, Bisbee, all these old West towns. So I really got into the Old West. So I discovered Deadlands, and so that was my gateway into Savage Worlds. And then just seeing how adaptable it was to everything. I ran a Weird Wars Rome campaign, did some Deadlands, played some other stuff, and then so yeah, so it just Savage, and plus I was really attracted to the licensing setup the way they have, so it's just really great. So Shane from Pinnacle, the creator of it, fantastic guy. I had the pleasure of meeting him a couple times at cons and even playing in one of his games. He played in one of my games, which was really cool. So yeah, it's just the Savage Worlds is just a great adaptable system. If you played it once, and you can just jump into another setting with just a little adjustment for the setting specific rules.
legit? And it's always good to get to use local stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
Being from the cold northern wastes of Canada, not an opportunity I get as much as I'd like, but
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting you mentioned Deadlands. What would you say really differentiates Deadlands from Sagas and Six-Guns?
Well, so Deadlands, their big thing is fear. It is a Weird West horror alternate setting, alternate history setting. So a few ways this is different. For one, this isn't based on it isn't so much horror driven. It is the idea we're gonna insert. We're trying to kind of retell the old the style of the old sagas, or maybe even retell the saga. That idea of the sagas just through an old west lens. We're kind of just reimagining the Vikings in an old west setting. So that's one big difference. There isn't really. I mean, yeah, you do have, obviously, since it is you have the Viking culture. There is obviously kind of the idea of Ragnarok and that, in the offing, but that wasn't really an everyday concern of your average Viking. That was, it's just, most cultures, most religions do have some sort of apocalyptic end of the world belief, but that doesn't really hang over people's heads every day when they're thinking about it. Regardless of how religious an individual may be, but in Deadlands, we really do have that kind of like there are some big baddies that are coming down on you, so it's not quite as horror oriented. It's more it is more the heroic. I mean, granted, Deadlands, you definitely heroes are a big thing, but we're not trying to we're not really going with a fear element. So that's probably a big one. The technology in this is still more along the lines of the Old West, because obviously with Deadlands you have a little more steampunk element. You do have a little more fantastic technology and whatnot with like the ghost rock and everything. So this there are I mean so there is an arcane background called the Rune Engineer, where you have people that have learned how to kind of blend the power of the runes with the modern technology, the steam powered technology. It's considered blasphemous by more conservative elements, and mechanically it works similar to the weird science, and it can backfire on you. But the whole like new science and whatnot that you have in Deadlands, you don't have that in this. So there's you have the locomotives. You're not having like airships and all that kind of stuff. So technology is still a little more on par with the 1860s, 1870s, 1890s, depending on probably around 1880s, I'd say. So those are probably the biggest differences, and also I'd say also in this, the monsters from Norse mythology are definitely known and believed in. Like people know about trolls. They're not this thing that are just kind of rumored to exist. Troll, like there's this one town in the setting called Worm's Breath. It's named this because it's kind of it's a hot springs kind of themed area where you've got that's why it's called that. The idea of dragon's breath everywhere. So it's kind of a resort town, and it's rumored to have all sorts of medicinal properties, but for some reason it attracts trolls. So the local jarl has to regularly hire people for what they call troll patrols, to just kind of keep the trolls out of town, because obviously they're bad for business. But in fact, if you in fact now you can get it on the off of Drive-Thru RPG. That's the intro adventure Troll Patrol that you can get for free off of Drive-Thru RPG. You originally got it for the Jumpstart if you backed the Savage Worlds Kickstarter, but now we've got it available, for free. So you can get it. You can get a taste of it. You can meet our 6 pre-generated characters. Get to meet Six-Guns Fen and Gudrun the Gun Maiden, and Crazy Eyes Einar and the rest of the gang. So
those are some incredible names. I just thought you didn't know.
No problem.
All right, so overall, it's maybe saying it's a little bit more grounded isn't quite the way to put it, but it's certainly like more precisely the West with one twist. Yeah.
And another thing, it's not. So this isn't an alternate hit. Like this isn't just North America was just completely settled by Vikings. That's not. This is a different world altogether. It's just so this is an area that is geographically very similar to the Western United States, and we could go into this in the background in the book a little bit. So there's been several waves of attempted settlements in the West that have failed. But it wasn't until modern technology and steam technology and whatnot that they're basically being successful. I'm not going to really reveal why the prior ones have failed right now. That's kind of something I want to kind of reveal maybe in later. But I definitely do have some plans for expansions, so I don't want to reveal everything at once. But so this also sets it up so it's this land is being settled by Norsemen, and also that's why throughout the West, they find, there's ancient attempted settlements like Iron Age settlements and whatnot, and occasionally you find burrows where there's, a good old, everyone that, I'm sure plays Skyrim or just any big fan of Norse mythology, you got the Draugr, the Norse undead, which are just kind of a breed of their own, and so you can run into them. Next thing you know, you got a mining operation that just all of a sudden just stops. And it's like, what happened to these guys? Well, miners just dug into a Draugr burrow and have a bad day.
It's just how it goes sometimes on the frontier,
yeah.
you know? Yeah.
Which also introduced, created the situation for one of my favorite bad guys in the types of bad guys or monsters are the gun Draugr, which are undead bad guy, undead bad cowboys, that are not only undead, but they've got some pretty wicked pistols that can shoot hellfire and whatnot. So,
hell yeah.
Yeah.
So this isn't the alternate history scenario of the Newfoundland settlement actually succeeding in like slowly expanding south.
Exactly. Part of the reason for that is, I just wanted to have a little more room for creativity. Another reason is, having it would have been incredible amount of work to kind of figure out what happened with the Native Americans that were there, obviously, because when I originally came up with the idea, again, it was just completely raw. It was just like, people were like, so is it alternate history, what happened? And I'm just like, when I first came up with it, I don't know, I just came up with this idea of cowboys and Vikings. I don't know what I don't know where we're going right now. We just know we just need cowboys and Vikings together somehow. And so yeah, just because it would have just been so much more work to integrate other groups. I just really wanted to focus on telling stories of, just telling the Norse sagas through a Western, by a Wild West lens. So yeah, that's how. So yeah, it is a completely different world.
Okay, so you did touch on this slightly, but is the new world in this, is it uninhabited aside from trolls and that kind of thing?
So
Or
this area is being settled by the Norse. Other than remnants of failed earlier Norse settlements, there's it's just them. However, in the map, I worked on myself, and there are I'm leaving it open because I want to leave room for more stuff. The game, the setting is still kind of evolving beyond that. I've got some other ideas to possibly integrate, because I really like the idea of kind of mixing ancient cultures with the Western. I've juggled some ideas of maybe like of potentially maybe like I think this would actually work really well together, like a Roman kind of culture, mixing that with Mexico of the 1800s. I think that would work well. Obviously, Spanish is a Romance language, so there's obviously kind of that, integration right there. I've kind of got the idea. Alan and I have talked about maybe Japanese or Chinese with kind of like a California kind of vibe. And obviously, the idea of like the Ronin with as a Ronin or a gunslinger, they're almost interchangeable. They're very similar. So the Ronin and the single gunslinger. So there's lots of ideas that I've just been bouncing around my head. So yeah, there's going to be more to this world. Exactly what? I really, I'm not just going to throw in a group because I think it'll just be cool. I really want to, if I do decide, when I do settle on another group, I want to, do them justice. I'd rather do a small group, a few groups, and I'd rather do them well than just try to throw a whole bunch and then just kind of make it into a mashup that just doesn't work. So I want to be very thoughtful about that. So.
all right, but there's no First Nations is what I'm
In this area, at least.
okay, but
Yeah,
further out beyond the region of
yeah.
Norse Arizona, there may be
Yeah.
All right.
Pretty much, yeah. So, I just gotta, I'm gonna see what kind of creative juices come to me. I've got a whole bunch of stuff. I pretty much I keep a little thing on me that every time I just come up with some idea, I just kind of jot it down. And sometimes I sit there and I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? But
Yeah, the life.
but yeah. But yeah, we're just gonna, I'm just gonna see what really percolates and what really, what I think will really work, and then kind of go from there.
All right. So you said that it's between 1860 and 1880. Is there
Yeah,
an American?
I'd say probably the best probably 1880s would probably be the best representation of the tech.
All right.
Um, maybe I mean, it's not exact because you have the rail because obviously by 1880s, the Railroad was done. Um, so that wasn't, but in this, even though the tech is still kind of on par with 1880s, they're still in the process of building the rail. Like there are 5 kingdoms in this setting, and 2 of the kingdoms don't have a railroad built out into them yet. So there's still kind of that going on. So so it's still, I mean, it's not exactly, you can look at it and say, oh, but it's definitely this time period. It's not going to marry up exactly. It's just what it, it is still kind of a broad Western. So,
Yeah. I
but
mean, of course the railroad's not done yet. They keep hitting jogger nests, you know?
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
That's a problem we didn't have to deal with, actually.
true. Or dragons or trolls or
Ice
Jotun.
giants, or. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Sometimes Ymir shows up and smashes your railway. Like, it happens.
exactly. And speaking of the railroads, it's one of my favorite groups in this group. So there's the major railroad out west. It's called the Nine Worlds Carrier Corporation.
Yeah, alright.
And so they're a little shady. They're the president and CEO is this guy named Lars Larson that kind of seems to be everywhere, and he's got this very larger than life personality. Anytime he's seen, he's always like he's got a couple women, a woman on each arm. Just typical Victorian. He's Victorian gentleman. Top hat, silver cane or silver headed cane. He's known to like do things like a labor strike. He'll just wade into the middle of the labor strike and just kick everyone's ass while smiling the whole time. And people, and any of his underlings that get to and challenge him, or reporters that start getting in, looking into his background, just things just kind of happen to them. So, but at the same time, they can be a big time employer for your heroes, because they'll sometimes they'll work with the heroes, they'll hire them, and other times, they may be, the heroes might find themselves in conflict with them, but he's an interesting character, and if you play the plot point campaign, you'll learn a little bit more about them and him and Lars Larson and a few other people in the setting. So yeah, they're one of my favorite. I don't want to quite call them bad guys, but they can definitely be bad guys or big bads, antagonists. So you brought up the railroads and made me think of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned the rune engineers a little bit earlier. Is there much else in the way of spooky magic stuff?
Sure. So so we have a few arcane backgrounds. So you have them, which we talked about. You have the Gaudi, which are they're the priests. So picture like a old timey priest from fire and brimstone preacher, Western preacher, but he's got a bag of runes, and he'll cast runes on on a table. So he's kind of like your so they're kind of they can read the runes. They can kind of bless and empower and inspire their fellows. They have powers to be able to do that, because they cast runes. It does make their powers a little more permanent. So they tend to last a little longer, and they can also they can they can take damage, to represent themselves, cutting themselves and sacrificing their blood to the runes to empower the runes a little bit more, because obviously the gods appreciate sacrifice. There's another type called the Veleda, which are which are more like almost more along the lines of a witch, the Norse idea of the witch. So they're really tied with the idea of the Norns, fate and the skeins of fate. So they kind of manipulate the fate of people. So they're respected, but at the same time in this cult, they're kind of, people tend to be a little wary of them because they can curse you pretty nastily. Um, And then so another one that's kind of unique to this is the well, it's not, I wouldn't say it's entirely unique. It's the master skald. So as you know, everyone knows about skalds and in in that culture. So these are more than just people that can tell tales. They're so into it. So you might say they're a little analogous to a bard in more classic RPG settings, but they are so into they can tell a story so well that it kind of comes to life. So you might have a guy. So one of the pre-gens, Torvald the Talker. He's a master skald, and he can tell a story. He gets so into it that his companions just find themselves fighting like the ancestor, like the Einherjar, and he might tell a story. He'll start telling a story about a hero from ancient times. It's so real that it actually causes a phantasmal warrior from ancient times to just appear and fight at his side. So that's the difference between a skald and a master skald. Regular skald is just the guy that can tell a story, and or at this time they tend to refer to reporters as paper skalds.
Yeah, all right.
That's one of the things that was fun. A little side note. That's one of the things that was fun with writing this was kind of like how they got that kind of Western twang, the Western brogue, but at the same time they're throwing in the Norse kenning. So you got so you have pistols, a thunder iron. They may call it a thunder iron or a fire spear for that, and of course obviously the railroads are the Iron River. So if you're taking a train ride, you're sailing the Iron River,
Yeah, all right.
so so yeah, and then last but not least on the back on the arcane backgrounds, so this one is not only an arcane background, but it's also a separate race. So we've talked about the Norse. Right? I have a feeling you're probably going to ask if there's other playable groups besides humans, but this always does get asked, so I figured I might as well touch on it. So the only other playable race is a group called the Sigruni. So Sigrun was a Valkyrie. So this group of Valkyries, being led by Sigrun, descended upon a battlefield in the west, like they've been doing for thousands of years, to pick up the slain, ferry them back to Valhalla. Well, so this mysterious stranger gave some strange runes to a rune engineer who created this device to try to capture them and take advantage of their ability to move between the nine worlds. It malfunctioned. He was blown apart by this, and the group of Sigruni that came found themselves trapped in Midgard. Now all of a sudden they're trapped here. They're completely without their armor and weapons and stuff, and their steeds, and their powers are greatly diminished. So they found themselves trapped on Midgard. They're completely cut off. So they're trying to figure. So you can play one of these kind of weakened Valkyries that are trapped here. So they're trying to figure out a way to get back. Now here's the kicker, because since they have that kind of demigod status, they can't just go get in an unwinnable fight and killed and scooped up by their Valkyries. If they die, they're gonna die. So they've got to figure out a way to get back to Valhalla. So you can play one of these. So they're interesting. So that's what one of our pre-gen characters, a Road of the Red Axe. She's very popular in the convention in convention games I've run, because with the Sigruni they're interesting because they're kind of anachronism. So your character, your character, if you play one, has no interaction, has no experience with modern technology and kind of modern culture. So your character speaks, from the perspective of the Norse, old timey. So you start out and you're going to have a negative bonus your negative modifier to using modern tech. You're kind of socially awkward because you don't quite understand modern slang, modern West, old West slang. But your character, being a Valkyrie, you are a little more powerful. You start out physically stronger. You're a better fighter. You're a better equestrian, and you also Sigruni, the Sigruni also start with they have their arcane background. They start with an arcane background called Sigruni Divinity. So as they kind of advance in this, they advance in power or advance in character level. Some of their powers kind of reawaken, kind of like someone that's been in a severe injury and is kind of getting maybe like rehabilitated to be able to walk again, or you know, how you kind of like if you've ever been in, you know, sustained an injury and you're trying to, you know, come back to that, how that kind of comes back, you know, slowly comes back to you. They're kind of in that same situation. So yeah, you can play one of them, and the last arcane background is one that is exclusive to them, that you don't buy separately. It is part of that character makeup. So they're interesting to play. I know every session I've played either at a convention or with my group that's played tested them. People have loved playing the Sigruni because I mean, she can just kick ass because she's a freaking Valkyrie. She's got a nice big axe. I mean, she's not really good with shooting, but she can chop you in half, and plus playing the whole kind of awkward. You got this old time, you know, you're speaking you're a Valkyrie, you know, speaking like a heroic demigod, you know, but you're in the Old West, so people tend to look at you kind of weird. So, and it's also one of the things where, you know, obviously in this time, you know, in this setting, people believe in Valkyries, but at the same time, if you just go up to someone and say, "I'm a Valkyrie," they're going to be like, "Okay, sure." So they kind of have to kind of keep things under wraps because they don't want, because A, they don't know why they got trapped there and who all was behind that, and B, they just don't want people to think they're crazy. But so yeah, they're the other race, and that's the last arcane background that you can play.
That's pretty cool. Trapped Valkyrie is a hell of a concept. And
yeah, my wife's idea. I got to give her credit for that.
Oh, it's a good one. Yeah. I mean, even a weakened Valkyrie is gonna kick your ass. Like,
yeah.
And yeah, socially they're kind of like Thor in the first Thor movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, not to the same extent, maybe, since it's only Old West instead of modern. But
yeah.
Man, you mentioned Kennings. I'm sure with the whole thing about Freya and gold, they have some excellent ones for prospecting and shit.
For what? I'm sorry.
For prospecting.
Oh yeah.
Finding gold, yeah. You know, searching the rivers for Freya's tears and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. See, that's great. Freya's tears. I like that.
That's a classic one. I can't take credit for that. I actually pulled open a list of Kennings. I've read through the whole thing before, but
yeah, that was one of the things, you know, I put in the setting rules. Like, hey, if your players do come up with a cool Kenning, you know, because you know how Savage Worlds is really big on like when your player does something cool, give them a Benny, you know. Yeah. So it's so yeah, it's another one. If your character comes up with a cool Kenning, give them a Benny, please. Yeah.
Yeah, they're one of the more bizarre elements of Norse poetry. Mm-hmm. So it's, you know, it's cool to see it represented, and I guess also Old English like Beowulf, but you know, mostly Norse.
True.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Is there anything else you want to highlight about the setting while we're here, or
yeah. So well, first off, everybody that's pledged so far, thank you so much. That's awesome. You know, I've been working on this for almost exactly 2 years now. So, you know, just to, you know, so like over the course of those 2 years, you know, I actually, like when I had actually put the idea out there, I just accepted a new position with a company I currently work for. So over the course of that, I was, you know, I work at a brokerage, so I had to go through my licensing and all that. So going through, you know, the Series 7, Series 66, really tough test to study for. So, so doing all that, you know, I was writing this while I was, you know, studying for these tests while I was, going through all the training with that. Also over the course of that, towards the end of that year, my father passed away. So it was just, you know, it's a lot of work, you know, a lot of things going on, and you know, and this is my first RPG I've written. I mean, I've got other things I've worked on, but this is my first one I've actually, you know, published, because, you know, thanks to Alan for picking up on that. So this has really been a huge learning experience for me. So again, everybody that's supported this, thank you so much. I can't say how much I appreciate that. I just can't express it. As to the setting itself, I'm really stoked about it, just to see it come to life. You know, if you like the concept of, you know, of the Vikings, I think I did I think the setting has done it, or the rules and the setting have done this concept justice. You know, you can pursue the Norse concept of heroics, you know, and and I think it's faithful to that. We've got some special rules in there that kind of that work on that. So everything from we have rules to represent your character's personal saga becoming bigger, and it'll get to the point where people will recognize you, and it can actually be a negative modifier if you're trying to like go incognito, because obviously if you're this badass warrior that everyone is hearing about, it's going to be hard to be inconspicuous. Got rules for that. Rules that represent what is called ring giving, where you're basically gathering groups of warriors to your banner for for a battle. Rules to represent that. Got that the concept, the term ring giving. I actually got that from the Beowulf story, and in fact, in this setting, the currency are rings. That is what they use. And we also have rules to represent the concept that the idea of the West, since it is a Western. You obviously have the gun, the gunfight at high noon. So we got rules to represent that, or the pistol holmgang, because holmgang was a duel. So figure we gotta just put that right in there. So we've got everything from that. We've got rules for some Norse baddies, everything from different types of Jotun to trolls to a few things I've kind of came up with this, like Fenrir. I think you guys will like them. So they're not just giant wolves. They're big wolves the size of horses that have a howl that's so powerful and ear piercing it can shatter your bones. So GMs, you're going to have lots of cool, all sorts of awesome baddies to throw at your characters and make them blow those bennies on soak rolls. So I think you guys will enjoy it. I think like I said, I'm really happy about this. I'm really excited about this. And again, everyone that's pledged, thank you so much. I can't express that enough. And
well,
so
I have one more question.
Sure.
You mentioned Fenrir, and I think I'm obligated to ask: do you have Garm in it? Garm, the best of hounds.
Not yet. Yeah, with that name, I figured. Yeah. So no. So the Fenrir are just a group of baddies. They're not Fenris himself, but I don't have Garmir in there yet. But I may. We don't have the final word on. There's going to be more stuff for this, so I may introduce them as another. Obviously, I would have to come up with some reason for them to something to distinguish them from Fenris, from Fenrir.
Partially domesticated. There you go.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
So there are, and on that note, on there. So another interesting thing about the setting, you have legendary items you can acquire. So you've got everything from dwarf-made pistols to the wolf iron, which is a rifle, a lever-action rifle, that the stock is allegedly made from a tooth torn from the Fenris wolf. It growls every time you rack around, and it howls every time it shoots.
That's
and it
hype
gives
as
you control.
hell.
Yeah. And so yeah, there's a few examples of the legendary items you can find over the course of your adventuring. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I like the idea of the Garmer. I'm gonna jot that one down and come up with something suitable for them.
Yeah, let me know.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, best of luck in your Kickstarter. If I recall, you're at like 80% ish right now, somewhere in there.
Let's see here. Last I checked, we were around. We were at around 1,200. But let me just double check.
Yeah, it gives me all the math in Canadian, so the numbers get a little funky.
Gotcha. So we are currently at so $1,387 with 80 backers. So so yeah, we're well over. Let's see, 1,387.
69%.
Yep, 69. Good old 69%. Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah.
Sorry, I overestimated a little bit, but you'll get there.
69.35%. But yeah.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, here's hoping, man.
Yeah, looking forward to it, and I've got like I said, other ideas, not just for this setting. I've got a few other RPGs I've been working on too, because just get those creative juices, and So yeah, like I said again, thanks to everyone. Thanks Alan from Gallanite Games, and then our artists Alan, John, and Jeremy. For between the logos and the artwork. Uh, Pinnacle Entertainment and Shane just for creating Savage Worlds, and thanks to also want to give a shout out to Crit Hit, Jim and Crystal Miller from Crit Hit for putting together that awesome convention there. I've really been able to get the word out for this here in sunny Arizona. If you ever find yourself in Arizona, they got it's an amazing just straight up 3 days of just nothing but RPGs and board games. It's great.
I'll keep that in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great time. So, and they've done some little like smaller conventions too, which have been awesome. So, yeah, and of course, my wonderful wife for putting up with me and putting up with all this. So, and my mom for inspiring because she was really into Norse mythology herself. So, for inspiring that. So yeah, and thanks a lot for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, best of luck in your project. I hope it goes well. I'm gonna take a look at the jumpstart after this. Well,
Awesome.
it's been great talking to you.
Yeah, definitely.
And for all our viewers at home, have a good night.
All right.